Okay, so I have not uploaded in forever. School happened, midterms happened, straight into assignments being due, straight into finals. So it's been a while. I also fell out of love for wrestling when Seth got injured, and I felt like wrestling was like a really easy genre of video to make for me since I consumed so much of it. Like there was always something new to talk about. But since Seth has been injured, I kind of feel like that that love for wrestling has went down a bit because I guess it made me realize Seth is definitely one of my favorite wrestlers. So I haven't had a lot to talk about, but then I realized that these videos are kinda mostly meant to be conversations I would have with myself anyways. Like I do a lot of talking to myself, which is maybe embarrassing. I don't know. I don't know if like I should not share this, but I don't know. But yeah, I do a lot of like if I'm alone in like a space, chances are at some point I will start talking to myself out loud. So I kind of figured I want to do that anyways. I might as well just hold the thoughts just a bit, record it, and then make a video. So because I don't know, I don't know. I feel like there is value in just having these thoughts, recording them, putting them out there, and then like whatever happens, happens. Like I've not coped with it, but like I've like talking about the thoughts out loud gets me to I guess solidify my opinion or like figure out as I'm talking how I feel. So I don't know if cope is the right word, but it's just I enjoy the act of saying things out loud and just getting it out of my brain. It's like a diary. This is like my diary basically. I say things out loud, get out of my brain, and I think about it never again because I already know how I feel about it. Nonsense. So this video talk about wrestling. I just want to talk about One Piece. Typically, I try to keep up with One Piece weekly. Weekly is a stretch. Oda does not drop the shit weekly. Maybe we'll say bi-weekly. Let's say bi-weekly. But I think I fell off around maybe like let's say July. I can actually check. I don't know if I could check. I could check, but like it's not worth. Yeah, I'm checking anyways. I don't know why I. Yeah, what you know what? It's like why not? You know. So I think the last chapter I read before I just binged like 12. Okay, I binged 12. So the recent chapter is 1168 as of recording. So if I go 12 backwards, I guess that's 1154. Okay, sure. And in chapter 1154, One Piece chapter 1154 release date. That came out July. Okay, so I didn't have to do this any of this at all. It is July. Okay, so I start reading in July. Not sort of like anything like bad. I don't. Ongoing manga is hard for me because I feel like it's never enough content to truly like satiate my hunger. So for example, Kingdom, another manga I love. I read Kingdom by the arc, so I will just be 60 chapters behind and then just binge that 60 in span of like a week once the whole arc is completed, and that's how I enjoy reading Kingdom. With One Piece, because the YouTube series is so big, it's kind of like it's easier to read it weekly because I read weekly and I go look at my Tekken video and then I watch my Tekken video. The Tekken drops the video the next day where he's like going through the theories and shit. And then I watch like I used to watch that a lot. Morge, yeah, Morge Media and Tekken were like Tekken was one, and then Morge and Media kind of swapped to One Piece with me, but then I kind of fell out of the whole One Piece YouTube thing. Besides Tekken, because I just love Tekken. So I fell behind in July, and then I binged the chapters about a week ago. It's like 5 days ago. So chapter is 1155 to the current one, 1168. I think 66, 7. I'm not sure. 68, right? Okay. So And then I realized something. I don't remember when I realized it. I think I was literally like scrolling TikTok, and because I had been reading One Piece, my algorithm was like more One Piece induced. It always is, but just more. So I was reading like Shanks versus Mihawk propaganda, right? And before this span of reading that I did 5 days ago, I was a very very pro Shanks is stronger than Mihawk guy, right? I admit it. I go for propaganda. I'm so sorry to all my readers with comprehension. I'm so sorry, right? So one of the big things why I was well, he's a hockey man. So even though Shanks is the Mihawk is the strongest swordsman, he's not really a swordsman. It's like Sasuke. Sasuke isn't a swordsman. He's a nigga with a sword. You know. So I really believe that Mihawk was still the strongest swordsman. Shanks just didn't qualify as a swordsman. Like I really believe that, right? But then I started thinking, I don't know where the seed came from, this thought process. But I realized like Shanks doesn't have to be Luffy's final opponent. And the idea that that needs to be true is propaganda in itself, right? Because I feel like um for me, the big thing was like, okay, well, the story ends when Luffy like beats Shanks, and the story ends when Zoro beats Mihawk. So, and in every arc, Luffy is portrayed as stronger than Zoro, right? I think it started what the arc with. Let me think. I think they were like portrayed as relatively equals until like what is the arc with Whiskey Peak? Yes, Whiskey Peak where they meet Vivi. Yeah. In Whiskey Peak, they're portrayed as equal, right? But I think Alabasta, right? Luffy fights Mr. Zero, Zoro fights Mr. One, Sanji fights Mr. Two, right? And that's the consistent theme into the whole story. At fucking Water 7, right? Luffy fights Lucci, who's the strongest guy. Zoro fights Kaku, their second rank, and Sanji fights Wolf Nigga, whatever Wolf Nigga's name is, I don't know. Wano, most recent. Luffy fights Kaido, Zoro fights King, Sanji fights Queen, right? So we've seen where after Whiskey Peak, there's a clear gap between Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. It's like it's tears, right? So in my head, I was thinking, well, how would it make sense for Luffy to end the story beating Shanks, who's at that point weaker than Mihawk? Like that kind of doesn't make sense. So so that was kind of the basis of my like, oh well, Shanks isn't a swordsman; he's a hockey man because he has to be stronger than Mihawk, right? But then I realized like, does that even make logical sense? Like, where does that idea that Shanks one that he isn't a swordsman, which in hindsight is a crazy opinion to have, and two, he needs to be Luffy's final opponent, right? Because I think objectively, Mihawk needs to be Zoro's final opponent because Mihawk is portrayed as the top of his division, let's say, whatever, top of his division, right? So it would make sense for Mihawk to be that final hurdle that Zoro crosses. But why does that necessarily apply to Luffy and Shanks, right? Because Luffy's dream, let's do Zoro first. Zoro's dream is to be the strongest swordsman, right? That's extremely quantifiable. Not Shanks, sorry. Mihawk is the current strongest swordsman. So for Zoro to achieve for Zoro to achieve his dream, he needs to beat Mihawk. Like that makes logical sense, you know? Like if this is the strongest nigga, and you want to be the strongest nigga, what did Ric Flair say? To be the man, you've got to beat the man, right? So Zoro's dream, in reference of Mihawk being his final opponent, makes logical sense. right? But Luffy's dream was never to be stronger than Shanks or to beat Shanks. It's to be king of the pirates. So on that quest to be king of the pirates, why does Shanks need to be the last hurdle? Because let's say go back to the end of one, right? Let's say the log, what do they call it? Log poles, the compasses, whatever the compasses are called. Let's say is Luffy pick a different compass, right? And run into Shanks instead of Kid running into Shanks, right? He meets Shanks, he gives him the hat. Would the story end there? No, no, it wouldn't, right? And then let's say Zoro. Let's say there was a fourth compass that led to whatever Bucky's Island is currently called, right? And then the Straw Hats pull up, Zoro fights Mihawk, Zoro wins. Would the story end there? No, Zoro's not the main character. But that would kind of conclude Zoro's arc. He'll still be around to beat niggas up because, he respects Luffy and shit like that. But I would say Zoro would have achieved his dream. That would have been a tick beside Zoro and his dream, right? But Luffy's dream is to be king of the pirates, not to become stronger than Shanks. And I think he reminded me of JJK. Like JJK finished like a year ago at this point. But one of the most fun parts of JJK was I think the Gojo Sukuna fight. Like objectively, if you were reading the manga at that time, the community was so fun to be a part of. Right, the manga itself was good. Watching the both of them destroy the fucking power systems, like cheating the power systems, finding ways around it, like reading that shit on release. Gojo versus Sukuna was so fun, right? But you had this group of people that could not cope with the fact that Gojo loses to Sukuna, right? And I think it's the same thing with Naruto and Jiraiya, right? Jiraiya needs to die, right? Obi-Wan needs to die for Luke Skywalker to grow, right? We didn't see the leap Naruto took in terms of training before and after Jiraiya's death was crazy, right? He went from struggling to fucking sage mode whooping pain 1 versus 6, right? I think, well, technically he lost that fight, but you know what I mean. Did he lose that fight? How did he? I'd say Naruto lost that fight, technically lost that fight. But he was putting hands on him, which was better than anybody else in the village at the time, right? Everybody else getting shit on by pain, he comes up, put hands on pain, right? So you need the mentor figure to die to make room for the growth of the mentee, right? That's like fiction 101, And I think you could say that Shanks, along with other characters, but Shanks is Luffy's inspiration, Luffy was not there at Roger's execution, but he kind of inherited, Shanks inherited Roger's will, and Luffy then inherited Shanks' will, which is as an extension Roger's will, right? So I I think Shanks at some point in the story needs to die, and I don't think that would ever be at the hands of Luffy. Which takes me to Blackbeard, right? I think if we're going to like headcanon this final opponent for Luffy, it needs to be Blackbeard. I think if I were to guess the events of the ending of the story, right? I think Rocks showed us that one man cannot defeat evil. I think if you're ranking the top five strongest characters in One Piece as we know right now, I think Emu is objectively one, no contest. And then 5 through 6 are the girls, no contest. And then we can start saying who's number 7, and then that's a conversation, right? But I think numbers 1 through 6 are taken by Emu and his 5 girls, his 5 niggas, right? So I think I think before the One Piece is found, the government will be toppled. All I'm seeing it is that first thing happens. I think um, Blackbeard kills Shanks, right? I think that happens first in the timeline, and then I think that probably, yeah, I changed my mind. I think Luffy beats Shanks, right? I think we give Shanks the hat. I think later on, Shanks turns into Blackbeard. I think Blackbeard defeats Shanks, kills Shanks, takes the hat, right? Then I think Luffy, Blackbeard, and Buggy all at the same time, but not on purpose, end up fighting Emu. Well, not Emu, fighting the world government. What I'm saying is like, oh, Blackbeard's over here, he's fighting the three admirals. Buggy's over here, he's fighting the Corvusay. Luffy's over here fighting Emu, right? I think, I think we need, I think the defeat of Emu and the world government is a team effort that takes place before the finding of the One Piece. And I also think because this is post Blackbeard killing Shanks, Luffy would never work with Blackbeard because he technically killed Ace and killed Shanks, right? He's effectively his father and his brother, right? So I think they would never work together, but by chance they would be fighting the world government at the same time and somehow like by proxy be helping each other, although they're still enemies. And so I think that happens. And then I think those three parties are kind of the last three left in the race to find the One Piece after the government has been defeated. Luffy, Blackbeard, Buggy. And then I think we get these final fight matchups. I think Luffy's final matchup is Blackbeard, and of course Zoro's is Mihawk, right? But I think you need Shanks removed from the story for that to happen. And I don't think because Shanks is weaker than Mihawk, you can't have Shanks be the final enemy. And it makes the most sense to have the mentor die to the inevitable final boss. It's not that rules. The inevitable final boss in Blackbeard, and then have the MC beat that said final boss, essentially proving, hey Shanks, I did surpass you. If that makes sense. Like he simply surpasses him by proxy because he beat the guy that beat him. Pain beat Jiraiya, Naruto beat Pain, right? I think that I think that's the format for how the story concludes. And because that format doesn't require Shanks to be stronger than Mihawk, and it's been stated that Mihawk is stronger than Shanks, I think I'm comfortable saying that Mihawk is the strongest swordsman in the world, which puts him above Shanks. Yeah, that's all this video was. I wanted to yap about Mihawk versus Shanks. I'm going to send this shit to Jovan. I have Jovan to fucking to edit this shit for me and see if I can drop a video today. We'll see.